The Harry Potter show just got some exciting news, and honestly, this one feels bigger than it might seem at first, because the headline here is not that we may have gotten our first real look at Professor Quirrell, and it's also not the behind-the-scenes documentary that gave us a much better look at the world of Harry Potter that they're building. The big news here is that season 2 already looks like it's moving much sooner than people expected, and if this leak is real, we might be getting season 2 filming really soon. So today I'll be diving into the latest news for the Harry Potter show. If you guys are excited for this show, hit the sub button, and without further delay, let's dive in. Okay, so before we dive into the first look at Quirrell, let's first talk about the big news here, and that is season 2 of the show. A new report is circulating through the Harry Potter community that says season 2 is expected to film from August 2026 through May of 2027, with a possible Christmas 2027 release in mind for Chamber of Secrets. Now, this is currently unconfirmed, like that specific window does make sense, but again, it's unconfirmed at this point. But what makes this really believable is that it lines up with the broader official messaging from HBO leadership, because Casey Bloys has already said that season 2 is actively being written now, and the goal is to avoid a huge gap between seasons, specifically because of the kids growing up every year, and obviously they want to avoid the Stranger Things situation. So even if that exact August to May timeline is not locked in, I think the biggest news here is that HBO is moving a lot faster than people were expecting, and honestly that is exactly what they need to do. This is Harry Potter we're talking about. They're really on a strict schedule. Like, you can't have a 20-year-old that's entering year 4 of Hogwarts. Like, that just doesn't work. So yeah, if the August 2026 through May 2027 schedule is real, then season 2 of the show, like, being written could be wrapping up relatively quickly. Like, they basically have the next few months to really iron out the script, get it to the point where it's like almost perfect, and then the next few months we should be getting leaks and rumors regarding the filming sets and stuff. So yeah, before season 1 of the show even drops, we could be seeing scenes from season 2 already, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So next up, we got what seems to be our first look at Professor Quirrell. This is according to Wizarding World Direct, and I believe this was the behind the scenes footage from the Finding Harry documentary, which if you guys haven't watched that, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But according to Wizarding World Direct, via someone on Reddit named user Two-Face, which is kind of fitting because we're talking about Quirrell here, well, it looks like they spotted Luke Thalen as Quirrell in costume during the new footage that we got revealed during the Finding Harry documentary. Now, the thing that has people talking is the look itself. Like, this Professor Quirrell has no turban, he's pale, and overall he looks really good. It definitely doesn't give off the energy of this dude is sus, he's got to be the bad guy type energy that the original film carried. But again, if you actually look at the details, and right here is what really matters. Now, there's some people that immediately pointed out that he has no turban. Why doesn't he have a turban on? But it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of the lore, because if the show is depicting Quirrell before the failed Gringotts attempt, well, then Voldemort would not physically be attached to the back of his head yet. That means him not having a turban on is not a mistake. This is actual lore from the first book. Now, the movie, obviously, whenever Harry met Quirrell at the Leaky Cauldron, he already had the turban on, but at least at this point in the show that we've seen from this still image, this was likely what Quirrell looks like before he puts on the turban. Now, one thing that I did see some people pointing out was the glasses, and that looks like it's a bit of creative liberty that they're taking with this character, and honestly it works. It kind of softens him up a bit. Looking at his Quirrell, he seems a lot more harmless than what he did in the actual first movie, so this should be pretty good. And for people that have never seen the movies and we haven't read the books, it actually is perfect for the show. It makes Quirrell be a little bit more innocent, whereas the energy that he put off in the movies was almost it was kind of obvious villainous. Harry sees Quirrell for the first time, and he should expect that he's not sus, he's just a professor at Hogwarts, and that's what makes the overall twist at the end so much more impactful. So yeah, I like this change. I think it looks great. Luke Thalen looks great as Quirrell, and who knows, maybe the glasses were his actual real life glasses, Luke's glasses, and those are not a part of the costume. It's hard saying. I guess we'll have to find out once we actually watch the series. Now, moving right along, let's talk about the documentary, because this whole thing is what has me the most exciting. If you guys have not watched Finding Harry yet, what are you doing? Go to HBO, watch that as soon as possible. It is so good. And the documentary really focuses on the teams behind the casting, the costumes, the creature effects, the sets, and just the overall crafting and the production side of things that we typically wouldn't see until after the show is out, but we got it actually before, which is pretty cool. And what I will say is, like, whenever they said that they're going for more color with this new series, like, they actually meant it. Obviously the trailers have filters and the, you know, sets are a little bit moodier, but the series certainly looks like it's going to be a lot more vibrant than some people may feared. The robes have color, the sets feel tactile, and the props don't look like just like regular fantasy merch. They look lived in. Like, some of those magical creatures that they're creating are just absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I want one of those, but it would probably cost way too much money to get, and that all matters so much. Like, the level of detail they're going for with this series is just absolutely mind-blowing, and I think that's my biggest takeaway from this entire documentary. I came away from it like thinking that this actual show is going to feel a lot more warm and just visually alive and just stunning, and I don't think the trailer that we got, like, with the actual contrast of it and, you know, some of the darker tone is not going to be fully representative of the exact project. Like, once we actually see the color grading and the HDR and stuff, like when the show is like in front of us, it'll probably look a lot different than just a trailer online. Now, they're certainly not as bright as the Christopher Columbus projects, but again, I think they're like a mix between Chris Columbus and Alfonso's project with, you know, Prisoner of Azkaban. But if you're thinking season 1 of the show is going to look exactly like all of the later Harry Potter movies and stuff, I don't think that's going to happen. And if you haven't watched the HBO series, I recommend it because I'm sure that you will come away with probably the same opinion. Now, with that being said, I do think the next 3 seasons have to be nearly perfect. I'm not saying like they have to be flawless in the literal sense, because, you know, nothing is going to be, but they have to be good enough to earn the audience's trust for the long haul. Seasons 1 through 3 are the runaway. Like, they have to crush it with these. Like, these are the years where HBO has to prove the whole thing. Like, they have to justify everything else. But if, you know, Philosopher's Stone lands, if, you know, Chamber of Secrets does well, and same with Prisoner of Azkaban, then the show will have some real momentum. And if season 1 releases and it's just like kind of meh, then I do think that the rest of the series might suffer. Could they bring it back with like Prisoner of Azkaban? Sure. Like, obviously the first 2 Harry Potter movies, those, you know, movies have flaws. And then Prisoner of Azkaban happened, and that was like the best thing since sliced bread. Now, in my opinion, I think Prisoner of Azkaban is the best movie out of every single Harry Potter movie. Like, obviously I've seen all of them many times. Like, I watch them almost every like few months, but out of all of them, Prisoner of Azkaban is just the best in my opinion. Now, for books, that's a little bit more complicated because I love the books so much, but I still think the Goblet of Fire is the best out of all of them. Now, next up, there has been some discussions amongst the community regarding the 8-episode structure. This was actually like, I believe Collider is the one who talked about it, but there was an article that was posted that HBO's Harry Potter series drops devastating news for diehard fans, and the news was that the first, you know, season is only going to have 8 episodes rather than 10. And in my opinion, I think the, you know, 8 episodes is a very good fit. Like, just look at the audiobook. The audiobook is like 8 hours, so season 1 and season 2 are going to be like perfect with that 8 episodes. Same with like Prisoner of Azkaban. I think most of them can do really well. That being said, once you hit Goblet of Fire and beyond, I do think that the 8 episodes start to feel a lot tighter. It's not impossible for them to do an adaptation like that, because if you look at the movies, they were like 2.5 hours long. But like, Goblet of Fire really is where the series starts to expand in terms of the plot, the world building, and the overall complexity. Then you get to, you know, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows, and it all just becomes like really dense. So the team at HBO might have a harder time to adapt the later books in just 8 episodes without expanding the runtime. Now, there's no law saying that they have to stick to 8 episodes every season. It could be that, like, you know, the later books have to be like 10 episodes, or maybe even like for Deathly Hallows, they do 2 seasons specifically for Deathly. So my take is this: 8 episodes is great and probably perfect for the first 3 seasons. HBO might have a harder time adapting 4 through 7 in only 8. But again, if you look at the movies, like, they were able to do all of that in way less time, and the movies are still like really beloved. They're not perfect, but my gosh, do I love them so much. So yeah, the news for the Harry Potter show doesn't seem to be stopping at all. Like, season 2, with it filming like in August, if that is indeed real, like, we could be getting a lot of news about this show with all of the casting announcements and rumors and the set leaks and stuff. Like, it's about to be a wild time for the next like 6 to 12 months. Heck, for the next 10 years, it might not slow down at all whenever it comes to the Harry Potter show. But that's going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. What is your take on the first look at Quirrell? Are you okay with 8-episode seasons? Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe with the noties on, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys on the other side of the world. Mischief managed.